Hi everybody, I'm Lucas Rulff. Like I said, I run a digital procurement excellence team at Maersk. For those of you that don't know who Maersk is, we're an integrator of container logistics focusing on ocean, inland, and terminal services. In procurement, we're about a team of a little over 500 people globally. And in digital procurement excellence, we're about 40 of those people, and we do everything from RPA to RFXs to dashboards, analytics, and now Pactum. And yeah, Martin?
Hey, and I'm Martin Rand. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pactum. And what Pactum does is we're negotiating commercial deals for large enterprises using AI. So our customers are large enterprises such as Maersk and Walmart. And how it all started is that when my last company was acquired by Monsanto, I became a negotiator for Monsanto's Climate Corporation in Europe. And in these multicultural negotiations, I saw the amount of value that was left on the table because of cognitive biases and cultural differences and lack of preparation and all that. And what really baffled me is that in these large enterprises, with tens of thousands of vendors, 80% of them are unmanaged. And that's a huge amount of value left on the table for both sides. So we created a machine that can negotiate with those 80%.
Yeah, and we started working with you guys a little over a year ago to roll out the solution that we're hopefully going to demo for you today. But first, we're going to just give a little bit of an introduction to it before we jump in. And a day and a half into this resilience conference, I'm not going to bore you with any more comments about the things that are going on in the world. But what I can say is that in Maersk, there's also a lot of transformation going on. We're focusing more on inland services, more than ever, and that's requiring that we do more transportation procurement, even though we're a transportation company. So we're buying a lot of trucking services in the procurement organization as of late. And the concept of buying trucking services is theoretically quite simple. You have a product and it needs to go from A to B. But as soon as you start thinking about the product and how heavy it is and the dimensions, and maybe there's hazardous material in the container, it gets quite complicated. And obviously you need to go from A to B, but then B becomes A because you need to take the container back to its original location, and the complications start to ensue. I ran a tender, quite a large tender a while back, and we had a data scientist supporting us on it. And he told me something that I still to this day have trouble wrapping my head around, which was we have 198 quadrillion opportunities to optimize different ways to award the business from this big trucking tender. And I really can't get my head around it other than to say that add on top these mega trends that we've all been talking about over the last couple of days, and the complications get to be overwhelming. But also, we're now starting to deal with the spot rates. So we're sending more and more through the spot market to be able to deliver and address these challenges that we're facing on a daily basis. And so that gets into the problem, spot trucking procurement that we're working with Pactum on. And the situation was that a procurement professional could come in for the day, and on their plate there could be 10, 15 different spot negotiations that they needed to take care of, you could say, in a firefighting way. But on the next day, it could be literally their whole day is spent doing this. And so we thought, this is not sustainable. It doesn't seem predictable. How can it be unpredictable? We have all of the data, but as it says up here, coming from a conglomerate, there's many challenges with data, getting it and understanding it. So we needed to solve the data problem. We needed to solve the firefighting problem. And of course, as a procurement professional, we want to do it at the best possible price. Of course, not losing focus on the fact that we're all doing this because of the customer. We need to deliver on our promises of delivering the goods on time. And most importantly, from a procurement perspective, or just as importantly, our suppliers. I mean, them receiving a phone call 5-6 times a day, okay, now we have this container, now we have this container. It created quite a bit of supplier frustration, and therefore we wanted to find a process that we could improve our supplier relations with as well. Yeah, and so we called Martin.
Yeah, and when we started with Maersk, we saw a problem with the long-term contracts, and we saw a problem with the spot rates. So the problem with the long-term annual contracts is that they don't guarantee volume for the truckers. So the truckers will write that into the price. And we also saw a problem with the spot rates because spot rates negotiations are already done in firefighting mode. The truckers know that, and also truckers can't plan their capacity. So this is written into the prices. So we thought, but hold on, we have a machine that could basically be the ultimately scalable procurement people that could do contracts, but short term, and a massive amount of them. So then we could get the good sides of both worlds. We could have the sort of the volume guarantee of spot rates because the container is already on the sea. We reach out to the trucker 1 or 2 weeks before it arrives, so they can plan the capacity, and also there is the assurance of a contract. It's not just a spot rate deal. And the advantages of this is automation. So you're going to see it in the next slide in the demo. So it's a conversational AI system. So it can perform the things that people can perform in a very similar way, negotiating these deals. It's prescriptive, meaning it goes through so much data in the background that is equivalent to maybe 100 hours of preparation in human times. For any human, it goes through all of the similar routes and all of the routes done by this trucker, and it already assumes the price. And so negotiations are a bit more accurate. And it's predictive. Because it has access to so much data, it will reach out to the right truckers at the right time. So the truckers get a good quality deal flow, and the acceptance rate is much higher. And now the ultimate holy grail goal is full automation. So right now there's human on one side and a machine on the other side. What if we could put the machine on both sides? So some of these largest trucking companies have now reached out and said, hey, our people need to be dealing with strategic deals. Can we put a machine on our side as well? And then it would be a bot-to-bot negotiation, which would happen near instantaneously and at always an optimal outcome for both sides. Yesterday, there was somebody on this stage saying that AI cannot negotiate multi-million-dollar deals. We are doing that every day, and in fact, we're going to show this to you today. So you now today have a privilege to be in a position of a trucker negotiating with Maersk.
Let's see about that. So yeah, it's risky to do a demo. It's even riskier to have the demo in the hands of a guy behind the stage that's never actually gone through the process. But it's also a good question to see if it's as simple as we actually claim it is. So guys, okay, great. It's quite small, but I think if you can't make it a little bigger.
In the computer, it's okay, I guess.
Yeah?
We have to.
Yeah. No, in the computer, it's very good. But for the demo purposes here, we'll just explain what's happening. So the first step in the process is that the supplier will get a link to be able to join the chat via an email. Already we have some really great synergies because instead of picking up the phone a couple of times a day, they're getting it at the beginning of their morning. So we can time exactly when we send out this link to the suppliers. No login, no hassle. They just simply click on the link and they're brought to this screen, which says, hi guys, you've made a deal in the last 7 out of 21 attempts. and we have another opportunity for you. And I think what's interesting about this is for the first time, I got to understand how are we going to present all of the information in a trucking request to a supplier in a small little chat window. And you can already see that with the right-hand side. It would also provide some information about when the opportunity expires, meaning when they have to respond by. And so then to get started, you just click Let's Go. And then the bot is going to start to figure out what is at stake here. And so what you're seeing in this little section here are two different opportunities to move containers for us. And there's some information about who the customer is, what type of an equipment it is, and then if you also wanted to look at the weight of the containers and how many containers there are that need to be moved, then you could hover over that. And then you're asked, okay, are you able to provide these? It says yes, or yes, but only for some, or no for none. And we'll make this complicated, so in the middle we'll choose yes for some. Thank you, guys. And then it asks you, okay, well, which of these two containers are you actually able to move? Let's choose the top one. Yeah, and then we choose submit. And then the bot says, great, we are now, the algorithm is starting to work, and what you can kind of see here is that we're proposing a rate. So here it says $485 for the move. Yeah. Can you guys make this move or not? And this is where the algorithm really starts its magic. So one is obviously selecting these two containers for this trucker. The next is choosing this rate. And Martin, maybe you can comment on how that works.
To do this is highly targeted. So to do this, it had to go through 100,000 rates. It looked at similar routes to that route, which we are talking about here. It looked at all of the routes performed by that trucker. It knows the geographic reach of that trucker, and it took into account all of the internal and external information which is relevant here. For instance, energy price indices and how they move, and what the price should be.
Yeah, exactly. So $485, let's also make this complicated. Choose no instead of yes. So we can't actually provide it today for Maersk. So put in $500 and hopefully that will be accepted, and then just hit enter or and it says your $500 is acceptable for us. So great, we made a deal, but it's not over yet, because now we're thinking, okay, how do we form, or what are other terms that we should be negotiating or discussing? And so we think, okay, well, what if we give you exclusivity so that all additional containers moving on this corridor or lane here you get for the next 6 months? Would you be able to give us a discount for that price? We give the supplier an option. And so go ahead and press yes on this one. And then it says, okay, you offered 500 before, so now what is your price for that? Let's put in 450. Should be good enough. And it says, thank you, we can accept the corridor for 6 months. Win-win, we now got a lower deal. The trucker got some exclusivity. And this is where part of the negotiation ends, but because we're collecting more and more information about what the supplier or the trucker can actually do, we want to figure out why didn't they actually accept the previous option that we had given to them. So if you click OK, then it's going to ask them another. Yeah, sorry, go ahead and click yes. This is where we're asking them if they would be willing to provide some information about why they didn't select yes for the previous one. Remember, there were two options that they could have quoted on. They only accepted one. And so then we've given them some options. It's hard to read, but there's some things like we don't deliver in this area, or we don't want to work with this shipper, or we don't have any availability on that specific day. And so if you click on the second one, it says no capacity on the date requested, and click submit, then the next question is going to be, okay, well, can you provide it on a different day? And if you choose yes here, then you're asked to give a calendar. And so if for some reason we're not able to reach a deal on this one corridor, a human can go back and look through the information and be able to take a decision if we should work with this guy on a different availability. Go ahead, yeah, click on the calendar and then just put a date in May if possible. Yeah, great. And that, I think, is going to be it. Yeah, okay, so that was it, but there's one more question. And so what happens after this is that, of course, the supplier gets an email confirmation directly saying, congratulations, you'll be getting this container around May 22nd. And then our operational team will also get a mail saying, this is the rate that we now have to put into the system. It's semi-automated on our side. Not completely yet. But then in the discussion of ESG, we also decided, just as of the last couple of months, that we should add in one more question. I think this question is only put in after every 7th negotiation, and it's only put in once. And the question is, before we conclude, can you please give us some information on any ESG initiatives you have? And so, are you doing eco-friendly driving? Are you looking at route planning? Are you offsetting your carbon footprint? And this is sort of free information that we're just now collecting, passing off to our ESG team to be able to do with what they need to. And we added this question because we started seeing that the average time it takes a supplier to go through this process is somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes. And so there's virtually no extra burden to be able to digitize and collect this information across the supplier base that we are collecting these bids from. So I think if you just click one of these guys and then just press submit, then that ends the negotiation. And then you can choose thank you or goodbye, but yeah, it closes out the negotiation. And that was it. And it worked, Martin.
Yeah, so actually when we started, people were telling us, well, a machine cannot negotiate. Negotiations is inherently human, like laughing or thinking or something. But now we're doing a massive amount of negotiations for Fortune 500 companies, such as Maersk and Walmart. And this was a very specific example here, but we're also doing working capital negotiations, which in indirect spend is happening very similarly in each enterprise globally. We're doing purchase order negotiations, we're doing merchandising negotiations for retail, and so on. And really the premise of negotiation, so the question is, why negotiations? Maersk is already doing e-auctions, but the premise of negotiations is expanding the pie. So any kind of an auction or any kind of bargaining is a zero-sum game. So one party loses, the other party wins equally. In a negotiation, we bring in new, as we call, tradable terms that can be traded for value for both sides. So as you saw here, it wasn't simply a price bargaining. It was, hey, let's do a deal. We'll give you an exclusivity for that route if you lower the price. So both sides got what they wanted. The trucker got exclusivity, the Maersk got a better price, and I don't know if you saw in the top of the screen, if everything goes well, the number of stars increases for that trucker. And if the number of stars is high enough, we'll start reaching out to that trucker in a priority order. That's another advantage that they get. So yeah, our mission is to tell the world that negotiations can create more value, and that technology brings that value to everyone. And thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Through this.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I'm running around because I was actually sat in the audience. I was transfixed. That was really interesting. I mean, I know we couldn't see it that clearly on screen because of the font size and everything, but I mean, I've got so many questions. Are there any more questions in the room before we start? Right, hand up here straight away. Just one question I had before we take that question. The bot negotiated that deal and that exclusivity based on that price of 450. What happens if in 4 months' time the person who's accepted it can't do it for that price? Or do they have to do it for that price, the trucker?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and it's a problem we face no matter what methodology we use for negotiation, holding people accountable, but that's actually where the algorithm can play into consideration future negotiations. So as soon as we see that start happening, it's a mechanism that is yet to be built in, but we've had lots of discussions that as soon as we can integrate this into our dispatching tool, then we're going to be able to penalize people for not holding to the rates. For now, we're just manually, or not manually, but through dashboards monitoring the performance and the acceptance. But what's really great is compared to there's a lot of effort that goes into a spot negotiation compared to a global or compared to a contract we sign yearly. Yeah. But what's good about this is it's happening 2 or 3 weeks before the move has to happen. So the likelihood of somebody not fulfilling the request is much less likely in this recent negotiation than it would be in a framework agreement.
Okay. All right, we'll take the question. You just give us your name and where you're from, please.
Thank you. Mark Fowler from a biotech company called Autolus in the UK. My question is, I'm presuming, or tell me if this is a right presumption, that you need to fix variables beforehand. So just like auctions, everybody needs to sign up to the platform so you can get consistency in, indemnity, liabilities, insurances, T's and C's, basically. Is that true?
So in other negotiations, we have many more tradable terms, and it's, as you saw, that the bot is conversational, meaning it would do what the human would do. And a human negotiator doesn't know before the negotiations what is valuable for the other side. And that would, this human negotiator would find that out during the negotiation. And that's what's happening in our negotiations as well. So if we're negotiating working capital, we don't start from negotiations. We don't start from the best practice of a negotiation is, hey, let's lay out everything that is interesting for both sides. So we'll discuss with the other side. Hey, we could talk, how do we make your business grow? We could talk about extending contract terms. We could talk about, hey, send us your rest of your product lists. We could send those to other geographies, or improve payment terms, and so on. And after that mapping, we go into the negotiation. So every negotiation is different, and there is such a unification which you describe, which is necessary for auctions, is not necessary for negotiations because every deal is different.
And this example, you have to set that in advance, right? Otherwise, you're not.
All of the
playing field.
Yeah. So the way we set it. So the question. I'll repeat the question without the microphone. That you would have to set everything up in the beginning. So when we meet the new customer, we build what is called the value function. It is a mathematical model that represents all of those possible tradable terms and permutations of that deal. But they don't necessarily have to be used in that deal. The bot will find out what's applicable for this deal and what's interesting for the supplier, and it will use those if this is interesting based on that value function.
But to add, these are pre-qualified suppliers, so this is our existing supplier base. But at the same time, the model is dynamic in the sense that it's using a repository of rates and current market conditions to determine what's acceptable and which corridors go to which suppliers.
Exactly, because otherwise it comes to the issues. I presume you'd see issues cropping up because people be agreeing things on very different terms, and it becomes what are you seeing on the back end? So my second question, if I may, is, are you seeing a reduction in issues? You've got your stars for how did they perform, in a kind of Amazon-y like way, but, are you actually seeing a reduction in issues and better performance compared to when you were doing this without the tool?
Yes, but with a caveat to say that given what's been going on over the last year or so, it's a moving target. So you don't know what are we comparing it to, and given the current conditions, if we're trying to get a container to move in a certain part of the world, it's you can't really compare it to this week compared to a year ago, for example. But what I can say is that the suppliers are extremely satisfied, and we first did a pilot, and now we're in a long-term agreement, and I was really concerned that, personally, personally, no offense, Martin, but I'm not a huge fan of chatbots when I'm on the other side. And so I was wondering, how are suppliers going to respond to this? Are they going to feel that it's more transactional? But again, compared to the phone calls that they got 5 times a day, one link with a quick chat, that's very formulated. We also ask at the 3rd or 4th negotiation for feedback, and so we're getting feedback as well as having regular calls, and everybody's really excited, to the point where some are saying, hey, we can put a bot on our side and have bot wars.
Well, interesting, because you said you called it a bot-to-bot negotiation, now you're calling it bot wars. What does that actually look like? I mean, obviously I can get it with the bot to human, but bot to bot.
So many contractual negotiations, I'm not talking about this example, but generally, are annual negotiations. Well, why are they annually? Because it's a tradition of people to do them every year. Is there a reason for that? I guess there are no other reasons. A bot-to-bot negotiations could happen every minute. It could readjust the deal for every fluctuation of the commodity price that is relevant here. So a bot-to-bot negotiation is a very exciting future in this.
That's interesting. Would the price negotiation, would it go in the favor of the supplier, for instance? Sorry, let's say the trucker. Would it sometimes go in their favor without them requesting it?
So I'm not talking again about this use case here, but absolutely, the way we usually do negotiations is based on dead net value. If there's 15 parameters to negotiate about, the price doesn't have to be the one that we focus on. Maybe it's nowadays, we see more and more, it's supply security. So the on-time in full delivery scores, for instance.
Okay, I've got quite a few questions here. If there are any more questions in the room, there are. Could we take a microphone here? I'm just going to take this one first. It says, do you think that this autonomous negotiation tool only works for tail spend and not for mega complex deals involving multiple factors other than price?
There has to be scale. That's correct. Those deals need to. So we've had a customer, not Maersk, but who asked, "Hey, we want to buy a ship. Can you negotiate that?" We said, "No, it's a one-off deal. It's better to negotiate that with a human." If we come in, it has to be the repeatability has to be hundreds and preferably thousands of times for this to make sense.
Okay, and briefly, question from the floor.
Hi, my name is Deepthi Williams from Energy Solutions UK. Quite interesting presentation. I have a couple of questions, sorry. The first one is to understand what we saw today is between Maersk and a trucker. Are we looking at this happening between a Maersk and a supplier? Or is it already in place? That was my first question. My second question is, would this negotiation at one stage lead to giving a relevant contact person for further negotiation if it just doesn't really go through is successfully not managed through to this process? My third question is, does it also support reverse logistics options, in the sense one of your options were to check, are we looking at carbon footprints as well as reverse logistics and so on. My question is, the industry that I come from, we are quite looking for the sustainability on a reverse logistics, and on the process of reverse logistics, we really don't have to maintain a particular time. We can bring back the products when the cost is cost effective, when it's quite less. So does such a system provide us the timeline when it can be bought back, reverse logistics happen at the cheapest cost? Can that be looked into in this platform?
So the first question, supplier and trucker are synonymous in the sense that they are our supplier, so we're buying services from them, so it's one and the same. And
so I meant between Maersk and your customers. So as such, a brand like Walmart wants to take your service, and so we are your customers and we would like to take your service. So what we saw right now is between Maersk and the truckers. I'm saying, is this platform available for customers?
Exactly. We're doing it on behalf of the customer. So the customer asks Maersk to take something all the way that they can, and sometimes we have to buy a certain leg of the service because we don't own the trucks to be able to get it there, for example. And yes, I mean, the second question was that having the right contacts is important. So we learned the humane thing of this is that, you know, when we send this link out, it has to be to the right person. It can't be to any random person. It has to be the one that's willing to negotiate. And it took us a while to get onboarded, to get all the right contacts. And the third one, I guess Martin can respond to better than I can, but I think the more tradable terms, you know, it's definitely not about price. Price is a big factor, and obviously there has to be a model behind that's numeric, but it's about a lot more terms. And so if I understood your question correctly, I think absolutely it could be applicable in that scenario.
And you talked about sustainability. Sustainability is a great tradable term, because what happens is that suddenly providers see that there is a benefit to, you know, using better fuels, upgrading trucks to be more fuel efficient, and so on. So that is definitely a very important part of negotiations.
Okay, look, it's really fascinating, and I'm so glad the demonstration actually worked as well, so that's awesome. If anyone has any further questions, if you want to maybe take it offline, but we have to end it here. So Martin and Lucas, thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
I just take the clicker. Lucas, I just take the... Thank you.